St. Lawrence Seaway workers go on strike after a new agreement was not met. Unifor has been working for months to negotiate a new agreement with the St. Lawrence Seaway Management Corporation for local unions in both Ontario and Quebec. Without a deal being met by Saturday at midnight, the strike shuts down all operations along the St. Lawrence Seaway. In a release Sunday, Unifor officials say the union and employer remain 1,000 nautical miles apart on wages. The SLCMC says the union has minimally moved from their initial demands for wages, which mirror increases like in the current automotive strikes. Seaway officials said there are no vessels waiting to exit the system at the moment, but there are more than 100 vessels outside the system which are impacted.